After the tremendous success of FNAF 2, a sequel was obviously expected. The second game was anticipated, but it was nothing next to the anticipation for the third one. There were even fake fan trailers already, and the way Scott handled it was very fitting for this series. Instead of revealing right away the animatronics, Scott decided to make the teasers a bit cryptic to keep the discussion going, but also confirming this game will be a sequel and not a prequel. Welcome to my review of FNAF 3. As always, remember that this review only takes into consideration the original 3 games, and unless I make an exception for some reason, anything that came after this will not be considered. And obvious spoilers for the entire trilogy. As the Steam page says, this game happens 30 years after Freddy's closed, which probably means this game takes place in 2023. Yeah,
Shut up! Get out!
This time the setting has changed completely. Now they decided to make a horror attraction out of the rumors of the original restaurant, Fazbear's Fright. As a side note, I remember when the books were announced I thought they would talk about this place, but no, turns out they just share the title. In this new location they brought an animatronic, but it's not someone we saw in the previous games. He is a bunny, but his body doesn't really coincide with the beloved rabbit, and he is the only threat in this game. I'm gonna say, the premise of this game is simply excellent. The change in location helps to offer a fresh air to the game, and this whole game has a very good contrast to FNAF 2 thematically. In FNAF 2, we went to the past where things were trying to be appealing and kid-friendly, and with a lot of threats, doubling from 4 to 11. In this game, we go to the future where everything is rotten, the place is forgotten and now trying to be scary, and instead of adding more animatronics, the number has been reduced to 1. And it isn't with Freddy or Golden Freddy or the puppet or any animatronic we knew, it is with this new thing whose name is Springtrap. And from the moment you see it's clear there's something out of place with him. Yeah, these 3 games work wonderfully conceptually, but we all know they always have issues and pros with the execution. So, how did FNAF 3 do? We play as a nameless security guard. This time they don't even have a name. I think it's a shame that in these 3 games the security guard never even had something. It wouldn't need to be the focus of the game, but just give us something about the character we play as. We are welcomed by this dude, who is normally referred to as Fun Dude. He tells us some things they found and a few concerns. Aside from that, nothing happens in this night. However, we finish and we get a minigame. Here we play as Freddy in the FNAF 1 pizzeria. The building is very wet, there are rats everywhere, and there is no security guard nor signs of life in the place. So this happens sometime after the first game. There's a shadow Freddy who is telling us to follow him until we find a room we can't enter, and...
Purple guy!
As night 2 begins, Fondue tells us that he found some old training tapes from the restaurant that you can listen to, and that they found a real animatronic, obviously Springtrap. The rest of the nights are the same: listen to one of the tapes, survive to Springtrap until the place opens, and play a minigame at the end of the night. And for some reason, Fondue disappears completely. The game sets up a lot of mysteries. What is Springtrap? Why does he have human parts in him? What's going on with the minigames? First, let's see the phone calls. This explained that in Freddy's they used to have 2 specially designed suits that could be used as animatronics, while also allowing themselves to be opened and let a person use them as a costume. To not lose the atmosphere, I guess. But these costumes also must be operated with extreme caution, since the spring locks could get loose and hurt the person inside. With this in mind, it is very obvious that Springtrap has a person inside. This also explains the whole yellow suit in the second game. The yellow suit was a spring lock suit that Purple Guy used to kidnap the kids. Also, he says that they have 2 and 1 is yellow, so Golden Freddy is almost surely a spring lock suit. In these lines he also reveals that what was in Purple Guy's hand in the minigame, it wasn't a phone, nor his gun, nor a knife, or anything. It's a hand crack to change the animatronic to suit mode. This is why I love these phone calls. They seem useless at first, but when you look at them, they reveal so much stuff. Phone Guy also explains that room in the minigame. It's a safe room that the animatronics can't see and that no cameras watch, explaining why we never saw it in FNAF 1 and why the animatronics glitch when trying to enter but Purple Guy goes there with no problem. In Night 4 though, the Springlock suits are retired for having a lot of failures. At this point you might think the corpse in Springtrap belongs to an unlucky employee. In Night 5 he merely reminds the staff to not mess around in the safe rooms, but most importantly, he says that the Spring Bonnie animatronic has been moved. This actually gives us a time frame for all these tapes. Who else would move the Spring Bonnie suit other than the Purple Guy on June 26 for his things? So these calls happen before FNAF 2. Aside from the calls, nothing significant happens aside from the phantom hallucinations. On the other hand, in each minigame, Purple Guy disassembles each animatronic until the 5th night. Since we played with each member of the original gang, it only makes sense that this ghost is Golden Freddy. Because with a ghost we can enter the safe room. Here we corner him and we can see the Spring Bonnie suit. Purple Guy thinks that the suit could work like a Freddy mask, so he jumps into it. Yes, the animatronic you've been facing this whole time was no other than the one responsible for everything. Then bad ending. In Night 6 we get one final recording of Phone Guy that says that the safe rooms will be sealed up. I'll talk about the implications of this later. For now let's focus on the fact that this is the last time we'll ever hear something new from the Phone Guy. I understand he's dead, but it is sad we never even saw anything about him in the next games, except for repeating calls. I know he is unimportant to the story, but man, he is the only one who genuinely cared about our survival, and with Scott retiring it is unlikely we'll ever see him again. Goodbye old friend, may the force be with you. Rant over. Once we beat Night 6 we get a newspaper that informs that Fazbear's Frights caught a fire and it no longer exists. If we light up the image we see Springtrap's head, although it is ambiguous what happened to the rest of his body. Okay, let's stop with the explanation for a second. I love Springtrap and by extension Purple Guy in this game. First we learn about the animatronic and its history throughout the phone calls. These phone calls seem useless at first, but they get so much more important when you look at the details. You listen to these phone calls and survive to Springtrap while the minigames tell you the origin without you even realizing. They also explain why the other animatronics are absent, they were dismantled by Purple Guy. Springtrap is also thematically fitting. The killer who condemned his souls to be stuck in machines is crushed to death by the suit he used and forced to have the same fate as his victims, with his toe stuck in it. Perhaps even worse because he has no one with him other than the ghost who just want to torment him. The build up to him, not only in this game but in the teasers and trailer, was fantastic, showing how he was all that remains and giving us clues that he is Purple Guy through text like "He will come back, he always does, we have a place for him," and then one of the teasers made it more apparent by making it purple. So, you may wonder what was the bad ending all about. If there's a bad ending, how do you get the good ending? Well, it seems like Scott realized how insistent the fan base was on discovering every last detail of the game, so he made the steps for the good ending absurdly difficult to get. It's almost impossible to figure it out without playing an absurd amount of time and trying everything out. It was clearly supposed to be a community effort. To get the good ending you have to come to the west hallway in the end of night minigames. Here you have the clues you need to use in the following night. I'll explain them. In Camp 3 there's a puppet drawing that you can double click for a minigame. Here you play as the puppet and you can find 5 children with cakes. I think these are supposed to be the kids that were murdered in FNAF 2, and this is the main reason I don't think the toys are possessed. If that was the case, these children should have their masks, but they don't. And they are in color, which I think it's meant to mean that they didn't possess anything like the others who are in black and white. At the end you find a crying child. To complete this minigame you have to complete all the others correctly. First you have this clue, BBDB click, and the code. This is the only night where you can't finish a minigame without the other. First, the words mean Balloon Boy double click, so you have to double click on this drawing of Balloon Boy. Here you enter a minigame where you have to collect balloons. However, in these minigames you never go to the exit is a trap. Instead you have to glitch out of bounds where you enter this distorted place with some balloon boys crying. And a tree that is probably one of those take a balloon. At the end you get the last balloon that wasn't there earlier. For the other minigame you have to insert the code in the arcade machine. Here you enter a minigame about Mangle where you have to reassemble yourself and avoid the kid that wants to play with you. Again, don't go to the exit. Glitch out of bounds to enter the other world again. This one with a puppet crying. They could be crying for different reasons. I prefer to think they cry for the bad ending, since this is their fault. Then you have to use the balloons you found earlier to reach the moon and get a cake. Use the balloons and the cake in the Balloon Boy minigame to finish the minigame properly. The next code is pretty straightforward, 4 dark cupcakes. In Night 3 you might have noticed the cupcakes in some cameras, you have to click them. Here you enter a minigame with Toy Chica, you have to be cupcakes to the kids. This is worthless though, what you actually need to do is go through here and give cake to this kid. There is an easter egg. If you go down you'll find 5 cupcakes and one that follows you. This is probably representing the 5 dead kids and the one that follows you is Golden Freddy. Talking about Golden Freddy, the next minigame is about him. Now you get the code and insert it in the wall. Wait, what? Seriously Scott, isn't this a bit of a stretch? Here you play as Golden Freddy with a golden bunny at your side. Basically Springtrap when he was functional. This is where things get interesting. The minigame is called Stage 01. This means this is the first location where there were animatronics. This is no other than Fredbear's Family Diner. It wouldn't make sense if this was Freddy because in that case Fredbear's would be Stage 00. This means that the Springlock animatronics came from here and Freddy's just acquired them. It also confirms the 2 Springlock suits are Golden Freddy and Springtrap. In this minigame you glitch through everywhere until you find a child. In this minigame there is no glitch word but there is an easter egg. In the panel 6 there is a child missing. This can be a reference to the child that ended outside in the second game. Yeah, I still think these two are in the same place. As I say, the color in these minigames isn't very exact. In this game, Bonnie is cyan, Balloon Boy isn't very exact, Spring Bonnie has 2 different sprites, one with no buttons, and Golden Freddy's hat is brown instead of black. So I still think that place was Fredbear's. It just makes more narrative sense and the evidence against it is based on color, which as I proved is unreliable. One final curiosity is that the code used to enter the minigame is the number for the color purple but backwards. Very cool since the point of these minigames is to reverse Purple Guy's damage. The final clue is in Shadow Bonnie. You may have noticed the Shadow Bonnie toy in the desk. Once you double click it you enter a nameless minigame. Here you can warp between all minigames and a glitched place. You use the inexistent wall in Balloon Boy to reach him. In this minigame we play as the same Shadow Bonnie as in the second game. No, he isn't Purple Guy, the game files confirm it. And no, he isn't related to Purple Guy. Neither is Shadow Freddy. Remember, purple represents shadows because the background is black. Purple Guy is purple because he is always like a shadow. An interesting thing is that he starts in the same place as the Springlock suits. We have a Freddy and a Bonnie but no Foxy or Chica. In fact, didn't Fungus say that there were some accidents? Maybe Shadow Bonnie and Freddy are employees who accidentally died in the multiple failures incident, and now they help the children. Shadow Freddy seems to help Purple Guy, but then, well, he actually helped Purple Guy to meet his doom. And now Bonnie helps a kid. Seems like a really good theory, right? As you complete the minigames, the children start appearing at Happiest Day with characters' masks. When you have them all, the puppet delivers the final cake. The kid puts on his Golden Freddy mask and they all disappear, leaving the mask behind. Once you beat Night 5 again, nothing seems to be changing and you may wonder if you did something wrong, and then the game hits you with this. The souls of the children are free. There is nothing in the animatronics and Golden Freddy is not there, because his head was never physically there. He was a ghost and he isn't anymore. This ending is simply beautiful. The ghosts that have been haunting you since the first game are finally set free, along with the puppet too. It makes it feel really worth it. It's also a nice contrast to Springtrap. No one will help him. He can't move on. He'll never be free and he will suffer forever. In the end, despite all the tragedies, justice was made, even if no one inside the world will know. So, to summarize this entire trilogy, and also discuss some doubts I have. All of this begins either in the 60s or the 70s. Fredbear's Family Diner opens with 2 or 3 animatronics, Golden Freddy, Spring Bonnie, and maybe the puppet. The golden suits can be used by humans as well as turning into animatronics. The play is closest, however, after Purple Guy murders a kid outside the diner. This kid possesses the puppet to have revenge, and the owner sells the place to Fazbear Entertainment. They open a new restaurant called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, with 4 new animatronics, and the golden suits are used in this place and in a sister location. However, unlike the original workers, they aren't very good using this, which eventually causes them to stop using them for some accident. This could be the origin of the Shadow Ghosts. Sometime after this, Purple Guy uses Spring Bonnie to lure children and kill them. It is unknown if he hides the bodies in the robots. After this, the puppet makes the souls hunt the animatronics. Because of sanitization, the restaurant ends up closing. In 1987, they create more advanced robots with facial recognition to prevent another crime. Purple Guy comes back as a security guard. Here is where he probably discovers that the robots are possessed. At some points, he kills another 5 kids, it isn't specified when, but the puppet doesn't make them possess the robots. Then, in the final day before the temporary close, they have a party where the FNAF 2 main character gets beaten by Mangle. So the new animatronics get scrapped, and the old ones are fixed, but they can't move in the day to avoid another bite. They open again, but with all the tragedies, people stop coming, which makes the place closed forever. Purple Guy also doesn't appear. I like to think that this is because he is scared of the animatronics now that he knows the truth. That's why sometime later he comes back to disarm them to feel more safe. However, he didn't expect the ghost to appear. He tries to deceive them with a Spring Bonnie suit, but with the moisture and him lagging, the suit's spring locks close, trapping him inside. Here it is possible that the kids are the ones who make him possess the robot, because he doesn't seem to want to be there. He spends 30 years inside of it until some people want to make a horror attraction based on Freddy's. They look for things in the restaurants, and then they learn about the safe room and find Springtrap and take him to the attraction. He tries to kill the night guard for 5 nights until the place burns. Maybe the night guard causes it, or maybe the puppet who seems to be real, or maybe just because the technology was very bad. Springtrap goes with the other stuff to be sold, and at some point the souls of the original characters finally rest in peace. That is basically the whole story of Five Nights at Freddy's. It is very difficult to piece together, but it is very well constructed and satisfying, as well as effectively told despite its cryptic nature. However, there are some things that leave doubts or aren't very clear, mainly the safe room. It is said that the safe rooms will be sealed up, but when Purple Guy attacks, it is open. This could be either because Purple Guy broke it or because this one wasn't sealed. But then the problem comes here. The guys behind Fazbear's Frights didn't find this room at first, which implies they broke it to enter. So how was the wall back up? A lot of people say that Purple Guy did this before they boarded it up, but that's impossible. Aside from the fact that there are rats there, and there's lots of water, implying the building has been abandoned, the animatronics are destroyed here. In Fazbear's Fright, we see those parts. I mean, they get destroyed, then fixed, then magically destroyed again? I don't buy it. So there are 2 possibilities. 1, the ghosts made the wall appear again, magically, but this has no evidence behind it. And 2, the guys at Fazbear's Fright never checked this place and only did so when they discovered it existed. But in that case, why didn't Springtrap escape? I mean, he does come back to his place at 6 AM, so maybe it's just the programming of the animatronic. But I don't know, Scott should have been more thorough with this part. The next part that doesn't seem to make sense is the phantoms. What are these? If they are ghosts, why only these ones and not the other ones? They don't seem to act like ghosts anyway, so are they hallucinations? The teaser seems to imply this, and it would explain many things. The reason they're burned is because of the joke Fondue makes.
Some of this equipment is barely functional. Yeah, I wasn't joking about the fire. That's a real risk.
Their eyes are like Springtrap because he is the thing the main character is scared of. The fact that he sees the designs from both FNAF 1 and 2 could support the theory that Fritz, Mike, and the FNAF 3 main protagonists are the same. Again, why I would like to have more focus on the main character. This all makes sense, but there's one small issue. The phantoms break your stuff. If they are just hallucinations, why? And if you avoid them, they don't do it, so it isn't a coincidence. What, when they scare you, you jump so badly that you break something? Honestly, I think Scott didn't give them much thought, which is disappointing. Finally, there's the minigames for the good ending. The only thing I can think of is that they happen in some kind of limbo between life and death. There's also the fact that there are arcade machines in the minigames and in the attraction, but I don't think there's real meaning behind it. I don't think the characters are really chosen for a reason except for the last two, nor do I think that the first three have real lore significance. And remember, this was originally going to be the last of FNAF, so this wasn't teasing something in the future. So I think these minigames are more symbolic than anything. Unless there's a literal interpretation, and in that case, you tell me what it is. Finally, there's Purple Guy. We never learned much about him. I don't see this as a problem though. He is just an incredibly evil person who was never caught, at least by living people. I like it this way, just a mysterious serial killer like Jack the Ripper, although if I had to take a guess I would say, at least in this trilogy not taking into consideration later games, that it was the Freddy's owner. They never managed to find him, and Purple Guy is extremely good with the animatronics in every regard, which could mean he is their actual creator, but yeah, just a mysterious character. In conclusion, the story of FNAF 1 to 3 is great. The first one setting the mysteries and the bases, the second one expanding everything and presenting a lot of mysteries, and the third one and final game gives closure, solves a lot of the story and leaves some of them to maintain the mystery. And more specifically, the story of this last game is great and very well done, even if it has one or two issues. Which one is better? I don't think there's an objectively better between these two, but I personally prefer FNAF 3. If I'm being honest, I don't have much to say here. Every sound in the game is well placed and many have become iconic, so I'm just going to point out the most outstanding things. The game shares problems with FNAF 2, such as the ambience when someone gets close to you being repetitive, although it isn't as bad because the sound isn't so, I don't know, intense. Intense. I really like how the puppet and mangle were implemented, being both stressful sounds. Springtrap design may be fantastic, but his sound design is lackluster. Some fans argue that his sounds are calling for help, but I find that far-fetched and too obscure. It also doesn't help that for some reason he shares his screen with the phantoms. It is effective with them, but for him it feels out of place and, well, the animation doesn't help. This game doesn't have much going on with the sound like FNAF 1, but with some exceptions it can really help the atmosphere. You, alone in a building with a thing haunting you, looking for you. I think the game was going for a lonely feeling with the sound design. The alarms for the ventilation also work well because they will make you uneasy the first time you hear them, but it becomes stressful when you know what they do, because Springtrap moves considerably faster when they're active. Well, that's it for the sound design. Or is it? Yeah, music in Five Nights at Freddy's. That's new. Most of the music comes from the minigames. You would expect them to be eerie and uncanny, but they're actually really nice. Balloon Boy, Mangle, and Toy Chica's themes are all really friendly and relaxing. Stage 01 has a relaxing yet sad melody, and Shadow Bonnie's theme is simply great, difficult to put into words. The theme of the bad ending and happiest day is really sad, which was the point, so it's good. And the good ending theme, to be frank with you all, this is one of my favorite video game soundtracks, not just of FNAF, but in general. I already said I love the good ending, and the music is actually 40% the reason. It's simply such a beautiful piece that makes you feel like everything is okay and the pain is over. It's so fitting to be the end theme. I absolutely love it, and I hope they don't change it for the consoles port. I didn't mention it before, but some things like music were changed for the ports, for copyright. I didn't mention it because they have more or less similar vibes to the originals, so it is possible, but this one completely butchers it. It has a more creepy tone, which in my opinion misses the point completely. The problem isn't that they changed it, I understand that. The problem is that they did their own thing instead of making a different track but maintaining the essence of the original. But well, who cares about the consoles really? I don't, since this is the first time they come up. So yeah, the soundtrack is simple, but effective and sometimes incredible. It is true that Scott purchased them and they weren't made for this game, but they're still merit because Scott chose well. I think we should start with the biggest highlight in the game, Springtrap himself. If I told you that the villain in this game is a zombie inside an old rabbit suit, you probably would tell me that that's ridiculous, but it actually works very well. Now, I've seen criticism about the design of the corpse, but I don't think this matters because you'll never see it clearly in the game. That's like complaining about things missing out of camera in cutscenes, you're not supposed to see them. The suit, just like the withered animatronics, is excellently designed, very recognizable, but this time it also has human parts in it, which just look disgusting and very unpleasant. Another thing that makes him stand out is his eyes. Fittingly, they seem like human eyes combined with robot eyes, like if the robot just inserted its own eyes onto him. I also love his smile, let me explain. The smile gives the vibe that he is always happy and he enjoys hunting you, and it gives some good shots. But with the random images that behave the same way they did in FNAF 2, you can see the truth. There's nothing happy about this man. His expression is one of desperation, trying but being unable to escape the suit. It contextualizes the smile not as enjoyment, but more like a smile that constantly covers his suffering. There's no surprise in the slightest that Springtrap became one of the most popular characters in the series. In Dead by Daylight, it wasn't Freddy the one that they included, it was Springtrap, and for good reason. I mean, if you ask a fan of FNAF about their favorite designs, there's an 80% chance that Springtrap is between their favorites. And yes, from my perspective, this is the best character the series ever got. Now, the other designs are a bit less loved. Most people criticize that they are recolors from previous animatronics. To your surprise, I actually don't share this view. I've seen comparisons to the Withered and how they were redesigned instead of just broken, but there it makes sense, because before FNAF 1 they were fixed and redesigned because they found them ugly. Here, however, there are two possible explanations: that Springtrap is creating them to torment you, or that you are just imagining them because of memories of the past. In both of these, there's zero reason for them to be redesigned. And also, just because it is a recolor, it doesn't mean it's instantly bad. Look at these two. In regards to the phantoms, their design foreshadows the ending of the game, and by themselves they are used effectively. Freddy's walking, Foxy standing with a weird pose, Chica in the arcade, Mangle in the window, all good stuff. Oh, by the way, I have nothing to say about Puppet, so I want to correct something about the last video. There I say that Puppet was something you could see in real life, but I didn't give any examples, and of course the examples came flying at me after the video was released. So here are some. The elegy of emptiness statue from Majora's Mask, like, that's so much worse than the puppet, and it was allowed. Courage the Cowardly Dog or Are You Afraid of the Night are also series of children with creepy stuff, so there you have it, better late than never. So, in conclusion, the character design for FNAF 3 is very good. It isn't at the same level of FNAF 2, which had a wide variety of very well designed robots, but I would say that because of Springtrap it is a bit better than FNAF 1. The Phantoms aren't great or anything, but I think they're overhated. Are they necessary in the game? Well, that is going to be a subject about the gameplay. As said earlier, we are no longer in a pizzeria. I heard some criticisms about this, on how the place has less personality than the previous games, but I completely disagree. The pizzeria is good, but there's only so much you can do with it, and an abandoned pizzeria will be predictable. In fact, Scott probably knew this since we didn't see a pizzeria again until the simulator. Fazbear's Fright is full of personality, each room is different, and thanks to how the gameplay works, you'll probably remember all of them, with relics of the past everywhere. To me, this place also gives me a strong sense of isolation. In the other games, at least people came here during the day, and we have phone guy to talk to us. In FNAF 1, at least for me, the last night, few nights, felt a bit lonely, which is good for the horror. In FNAF 3, even though Fondute's disappearance is a bit strange, because you're always listening to a dead man, with things attacking you with you not even knowing if they're real, and the atmosphere of the place, along with only one real animatronic, makes me feel, as I said before, isolated, which I like a lot. The office is really good, with similar design traits of the rest of the building. However, I'm not a fan of the excessive green. This room uses better darkness than FNAF 2 and sometimes even puts some things there, but I think it could be a lot better. Something similar to this edit would be very good. Another problem I have here is not with the office itself, but with Springtrap in it. In the camera, Springtrap is excellent, but here he is too visible. Not only because you can see him very clearly, but the most common response is to stare at him, because he can't move when you see him, which can lead to some situations that completely ruin the horror.
Never have to see me again! Oh, damn it, there he is. Hey, buddy, how's it going? You wanna get a noise? Like over there? Like over there. There's a bunch of noises. Like noisy noises. I heard the noisiest noise I ever heard over in room 10? Is that a room at room 10? You might want to check out room 10, because room 10, whoo! Boy, let me tell you all the stuff that's in room 10.
His animations are a lot better because you saw he moved but you can't see him well. Another thing that ruins his scare factor is his jump scare. I said in a video that I don't have a statement over jump scares, but if you are going to put it, at least make it good. This will only scare you if it came out of nowhere, and it's so passive. Maybe something could be made like Springtrap very close to you and no sound at all, but regardless these jump scares are very bad. Which is weird because the jump scares for the Phantom animatronics are pretty solid. Once again, Scott doesn't implement the 3D effect well, and once again the hallucinations are underwhelming compared to the first game. We've got the paper pass back. This time they're a bit better because 1, they shouldn't be here, and 2, there's less stuff happening so they have a better chance of being noticed. Then there's the cupcake, this is just amusing, same with the golden cupcake. The Phantom Golden / Shadow Freddy is pretty noticeable, so it can scare you, but the posters of Spring Bonnie are so difficult to see that I have a hard time believing they will ever scare someone. Lastly, the Springtrap screens are really good, just like before, so there are even less hallucinations and only one of them can be scary. At this rate, the next game is going to have nothing but of substance in this department. So, in conclusion, the animatronic designs are better than FNAF 1, but not far from FNAF 2. The building is much better than FNAF 2, but still not at the level of the FNAF 1. The animation and graphics are as good as FNAF 2, although they can still be a lot better, no, don't get me wrong. And the hallucinations are as disappointing as in FNAF 2. Oh boy, where do I start? To defend ourselves from Springtrap we must use the camera system. Yes, finally! a game where the best mechanic is actually necessary at its full capacity and doesn't become useless. We have two inputs available. We can play a Balloon Boy noise, or we can go into vents and close one of them at a time. There's nothing stopping Springtrap from getting to you, but the animatronic is forced to move towards the sound. If you play it in a room next to him, he will almost always go there. I say almost because there are some rare occasions where he wouldn't move. However, maybe I'm wrong and it was just fake Springtrap. Yes, sometimes an hallucination will play and you'll see Springtrap in a room where he's not. You have to be careful and try to know where he is at all time because this can screw you. It doesn't help that Springtrap tends to hide, and with the low quality of the cameras you can easily miss him. When you hear a vent noise, it means he is entering one of the vents, obviously. You have to find him and shut it quickly, otherwise he'll get to you immediately. It is a bit stupid though that sometimes he goes from being far away to right next to you. It should take a bit of time. If he gets to your room, you can still make him go away with the sound, and if he gets close, you can use camera 1. This is like a last chance, like the power outage in FNAF 1, and you can survive a lot with it. With all of this, the main mechanics of the game are exactly what I always thought they should be, using the cameras to defend yourself from something hunting you. But of course, this isn't the whole thing, it would be too easy. At the left of the room you have a panel to reboot things as they break, because apparently rebooting them is easier than fixing them. You have ventilation, cameras and audio, and each day they break more often. I like how this foreshadows that by the last day this place will not be working. The audio will break after a certain amount of sounds. In night 2 for example you have 5, while on night 5 you have 2. The camera will break after using them a lot, to limit you like in FNAF 1, and the ventilation will break regardless of what you do. An alarm that makes Springtrap faster will play and you'll start closing your eyes, which allows Springtrap to move in front of you. So yeah, keep the ventilation going. Rebooting a system takes 5 seconds, while rebooting all takes from 8 to 9 seconds, so choose wisely. A lot of people criticize this by saying it feels boring because you do nothing while it reboots. But if you look at it from another angle, this is different from using the mask in FNAF 2. It is supposed to waste your time. In that regard, it never loses its tension, unlike FNAF 2, which eventually becomes predictable. Finally, we have the Phantoms. There are 6 of these and they all behave differently, but they share the same method to be fended off. You have to pretend they don't exist. Balloon Boy appears in front of the cameras and if you look at him, he'll jump scare you. You have to look away. To be honest, he's good the first few times, but he becomes very repetitive because the timing is always the same. It would have been better if he was like Chica. Chica does the same thing, but only on camera 7. If you don't look away immediately, she'll give you a good scare when you look left. She works better because she appears less for being in one camera, and you can't know if you avoided her correctly until you check. Phantom Freddy will walk through the hallway and you have to do something else. He is very good the first few times, but when you realize the trick, he becomes a total non-factor. Unless you're looking at Springtrap, but that isn't even what you're supposed to do. And he is very predictable like Balloon Boy, which ruins the horror. Phantom Foxy randomly appears in the left of the room. You have to go back to the cameras because if you look at him directly, boom, jumpscare. He is the best because he comes out of nowhere. He has a creepy stance that can scare you even if without a jumpscare, and because he can appear at any moment, he is always a constant threat. Good work with this one. Phantom Mangle appears at camera 4. She, however, is more original because instead of jumpscaring you, he appears in the darkness and plays a loud noise that is distracting and can startle you. She knows that jumpscares aren't the only thing Phantoms can do. To be honest, I would have preferred if only a few had jumpscares and the rest did more original things like Mangle. Talking about that, Puppet has the most punishing window to react and the harshest punishment for failing. He won't let you do anything. If you don't avoid him, it's pretty difficult to survive. I like it, it's not trying to be scary, it's just something that you have to be very careful with. Well, so far it seems like I'm being really positive with the gameplay in this game. And yes, it is true that I think this one leaves FNAF 2 in the dust, at least at its pace, but here is where the negativity begins. First, let's talk about level progression. In the first game it wasn't the best since by night 4 you've already seen everything. In FNAF 2 it was much more dynamic and had a new threat in the last night. But in FNAF 3, Springtrap doesn't really evolve aside from getting faster. What he does in Night 2 is the same as in Night 6, but slower. This means that the game only becomes more difficult because it throws more stuff at you more frequently. More phantoms, more breaks, the difficulty becomes avoiding all the stuff to stop Springtrap. This means that the difficulty varies a lot depending on what happens. Sometimes you can just keep Springtrap powerless all through the night, which isn't very engaging, and sometimes it is very chaotic and difficult to manage. In the playthrough I did for FNAF 2, I never died until Night 6, where I died 5 times. In FNAF 3 though, I died 2 times in Night 4, 6 times in Night 5, and only 2 in Night 6. Maybe I just got really good, but it shows how much more random the gameplay can be. This is what I meant earlier about the phantoms not really being necessary. They feel like they were made because Springtrap was too easy, and they conflict with the concept of a one-on-one between you and Springtrap. I say that I don't hate them, but I would have preferred if they didn't exist and instead Springtrap became more complicated. For example, in the first nights, Springtrap could be easily spotted and loud, but as night progressed, he would start hiding more often and get more silent. The building should also be more complicated and the ventilations could serve as shortcuts for Springtraps between rooms. But you would have to eliminate the vents closing. These are some ideas I thought in little time. Imagine what a developer with time could do. Scott did make this game in 5 months instead of 3, but 5 months is still too little to make a game. Scott should have taken his time and make something more ambitious. Regretfully, this game suffers from the same as FNAF 2, and just like FNAF 2, it also lacks horror. I pointed out things that reduce the horror throughout the review, such as darkness, the way Springtrap is used sometimes, and how repetitive the phantoms are, but there's also another thing that I noticed. When you use the cameras unlike the previous games, they don't cover all of the screen, same with the panel. This may make it more unique, but I'm surprised that not many people realized this was a huge mistake. In previous games you never knew if you would put the camera down and see something there. It helped with the tension. But in FNAF 3 you at least have security that there will be nothing there. At least it is somewhat maintained because the room is very long and you can't see the other side, but it would have been better if both of these things were combined. With such a small detail, Scott diminished the horror unintentionally. This combined with other factors make this game very unscary, which isn't a word, but I don't care. But at least it is a bit scarier than FNAF 2. However, back in the day, a lot of people say that FNAF 2 was way scarier, which sounds weird to me. I think maybe a lot of people were scared of the jump scares, but with the fun games and the 2 games, they got used to them, and with how bad Springtrap's jump scare is, caused this notion. But I'm sure that if FNAF 2 wasn't the second in the series, not many would say it is scary. Another reason so many people prefer FNAF 2 is because, like I said in the last video, FNAF 2 can be pretty fun, while FNAF 3 definitely isn't. But in these games I think the atmosphere and horror should be more appreciated and how fun it is. That isn't the point of these games. So in conclusion, I think this will be a hot take, but FNAF 3 has the best gameplay in the original trilogy. It's very original and less repetitive than the previous games. In this game you don't have a strict course of actions to survive and Springtrap movement can be very random. But despite that, the game being less repetitive, the nights don't really change in very significant ways, so it is less repetitive but more samey. But I would say it is better than FNAF 1. However, the horror really pales in comparison to its predecessor, so my conclusion is the same as in FNAF 2. It needed more time in the oven. Well, I don't know if the whole good ending thing counts as an extra, since it's part of the story. Anyway, after completing Night 5 you get an option literally called Extra, and each time you get a star, you unlock more things. For beating Night 5 you get the animatronic models. To be honest, it is really rudimentary and Mangle isn't even there, zooming in should be an option. For beating Night 6 we get the jump scares, and it's really funny how there's no warning at all.
You son of...
For getting the good ending we get all the minigames, and for completing all the ones mentioned we get some cheats. Pretty nice stuff, although the models thing could have more detail. It feels lazy. Finally we have the custom... What? There's no custom night? Well, no custom night. I understand the game only has one animatronic, but that isn't an excuse. You have the phantoms, you could modify how much the building breaks or stuff like that. It is really disappointing that it just didn't appear. In its replacement we have cheats. You can make the knights go faster, have a radar for Springtrap, which is really cool, and prevent anything from breaking, and finally make the fast Springtrap with the alarms permanent. These are all nice to have, but they don't fill the void of the custom knight. You don't even get plushies. I'm going to say it, this game is better than FNAF 2, and its backlash was completely undeserved. I mean, if FNAF 2 and 3 had the same mixed receptions, then I will say yes, it is deserved. But most of the flaws of FNAF 3 are shared by FNAF 2, and FNAF 3's gameplay doesn't suck, it's just flawed. The story was as perfect of a conclusion as it can be for this kind of storytelling method. So overall, I'd say this game is a bit better than FNAF 1. Not much, however, because FNAF 1 was scary. This one doesn't seem to be trying hard enough. However, being a bit better than the first game when the first game was so small isn't ideal. FNAF 3 is the best in the trilogy and a decent game, but it could have been a lot more.
Marge, I'm confused. Is this a happy ending or a sad ending?
It's an ending, that's enough.
But anyway, at least it ended well. Or it didn't. Well, I don't know if I'll make a review for the other games, but let me tell you that I'm not happy about the story continuing, nor how Scott handled it. Honestly, I prefer to treat FNAF 1 and 2-3 like the canon ones and the other like a what-if story. Well, that's the end. Sorry that it took so much longer, but I was a bit burned after the FNAF 2 video, and recently I've been playing a lot of Zelda, which is the reason behind why this took so long. I just wasn't working on it. Anyway, if you liked it, consider subscribing, check out some of my other stuff, and see you later.